a hostile work environment, and he was fired in retaliation.
Las Vegas, you're not just getting a football team.
Raiders owner Mark Davis tweeting that the team's president, Dan Ventrelli, is out of the organization.
Las Vegas, the Super Bowl is coming.
The prime thing is you have to win. You have to win. Otherwise, you can't be a success in professional football.
In the 2021 NFL season, the Las Vegas Raiders were ready to put the past in the past. However, less than halfway into the NFL season, emails concerning Jon Gruden's past were leaked, forcing the Las Vegas Raiders to immediately fire Jon Gruden soon afterwards. But as a result, with head coach Rich Bisaccia at the helm, the Las Vegas Raiders somehow miraculously made the playoffs, just signifying the end of years of failed leadership by Jon Gruden and Mike Mayock. And now, the Las Vegas Raiders, like they were prior to Jon Gruden's signing, could start winning again. But what if I told you that the leadership issue the Raiders faced didn't just start with Jon Gruden or Mike Mayock? What if I told you that the Las Vegas Raiders only acted like they were on the verge of bankruptcy for nearly 10 years straight, but during that same time they were overpaying their taxes? The Las Vegas Raiders may have been the only team in NFL history to metaphorically try to knock the lights out of other teams, while literally not having their lights on due to not paying the bills. And that's not even the tip of the iceberg for all of the dysfunction that has gone on in the Las Vegas Raiders front office, which they masterfully were able to conceal. A controversy that is so intense that 6 of the Las Vegas Raiders' top 8 executives unexpectedly quit as things were coming to light. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow, and to check us out on patreon.com/microphone in order to get this content even earlier. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Before we go over the long laundry list of issues that have come out over the past week about the Raiders organization, we must understand how we got into this situation to begin with. It's not like the Raiders organization one day was bought by some old man who worked in football and since then has been a very privately run organization, right? Right? Well, no, because that's exactly what happened. Prior to Al Davis taking the reins of the Raiders, the organization had just 3 wins combined in the prior 2 seasons. And after Al Davis took over as head coach, the team would go on to win 23 games, almost 8 times as many wins as the 2 years before him. After Davis's initial success in football, the AFL hired Al Davis to be the commissioner of the startup league. And as a result, Davis made sure that the AFL was the main competitor, if not the same size of the NFL. Davis did this by aggressively signing former NFL players to the AFL for larger, more competitive contracts, and even managing to draft some highly touted college prospects. After the AFL grew in size, mainly because of the signing of stars at the time like George Blanda, Len Dawson, Jim Nance, and most famously of all, Broadway Joe Namath, AFL owners at the time started to have backdoor meetings with NFL owners in hopes that the 2 leagues could merge. And after a deal was agreed upon, Al Davis was furious. He believed that in due time, the AFL would not only surpass the NFL in terms of size, but would dwarf it so much that he thought the merger was a terrible idea. The AFL teams were ordered to pay a certain amount of money to the NFL, and in exchange, the league would bring in some of its teams and talent. Seeing the writing on the wall, Al Davis returned to managing the Oakland Raiders and had part ownership in the team with 7 other co-owners. However, by 1976, after a hostile takeover generaled by Al Davis, the only other majority owner in the Raiders would sell his shares to Al Davis, thus making the Davis family the majority owners of the Raiders franchise. franchise. At that point in time, the Davis family had an overwhelming 67% of the entire franchise, but over time that number had dwindled to a lowly 47%, and although still the majority owner, has certainly lost some ownership. So now that we know how the Davis family acquired the Raiders in the first place, how did Al Davis's son, Mark Davis, seemingly mess it all up? How did Mark Davis go on to pay over $1 million in lawsuits and literally not keep the lights on, all while looking like the biggest joke of an owner in the entire NFL? On October 8th, 2011, the majority owner of the Oakland Raiders for almost 40 years passed away. Al Davis died due to heart failure, and for nearly the past 50 years, including his legendary AFL tenure, Al Davis was involved hands-on with the Oakland Raiders. Davis loved football in every way, and like many original AFL owners, he grew up dreaming of one day owning a football team and being involved in the day-to-day football operations. Al, over his decades of owning one of the most popular football teams in America, grew notorious for a few things. One, playing tough physical football, and two, well, it was his famous mantra,
"Just win, baby."
Al Davis, before the year 2000, just like the modern day Jerry Jones, helped his team evaluate talent, and in many cases he knew what he was talking about. However, in the 2000s it became apparent that the magic Al Davis once possessed had faded. We would know this based upon some of Al Davis's decisions in the 2000s, drafting Sebastian Janikowski, drafting Jamarcus Russell, and Darius Hayward-Bay. So in 2011, when Al Davis would pass, many fans hoped that Mark Davis, who was Al Davis's son, who had inherited the team, would bring back the passion and winning ways that the Raiders fans once knew and loved. Maybe all the Oakland Raiders really needed was an injection of youth, an individual that possessed the same character traits, but with a different perspective on the game of football. Just look at how Mike Shanahan was able to pass on his knowledge to Kyle Shanahan. They run practically the same offense, although Kyle Shanahan made Mike Shanahan's offense significantly more complex and modern. Unfortunately, this wouldn't be similar at all. Once Mark Davis took over, it was clear that wasn't going to be the case. The Raiders hadn't won under Al Davis in nearly a decade before 2011, but at the very least, the organization was run the correct way. There was stability in the form of Al Davis in the front office. But as soon as Mark Davis took over, well, that's a different story. Unlike his father, who needed to know what was happening with the team every single second of every day, Mark Davis didn't appear to care as much. Sure, he probably had a financial interest in the team winning and would have enjoyed the silver and black winning trophies, but unlike his father, Mark Davis hired a team of executives to run the team day to day. The tasks that these men were trusted with were things like paying taxes, paying employees, paying bills, making payroll, modernizing the program, and making sure the team made money. The football operation itself, but most importantly, making sure the team stayed out of any PR nightmares. And let me be very clear, the team failed miserably at damn near the entirety of that list, especially the last part. Since then, on the surface, the Raiders have had just a few headlines. Of course, John Gruden's history would eventually come creeping up on him, and a few of the players he fought so hard for in the first round, like Damon Arnett and Henry Ruggs, who have since been arrested and are on trial for potential felonies. To start, I am not blaming the draft picks on the executive group, but what I am blaming them for is hiring John Gruden. And I'm not blaming them for not knowing about his past emails because, well, who really knew at the time? But I'm blaming them for giving a man who has been out of football for nearly 10 years, who essentially won a Super Bowl by piggybacking off of another head coach and knowing the opposing team's hand signals during the Super Bowl, nearly a 10-year, $100 million contract. Look, I am no John Gruden hater at all whatsoever. I actually found the man very entertaining. I love the impressions that people make about him. But with all due respect to John Gruden, there is no reason to give this man a 10-year, $100 million contract as a result of his agents successfully yo-yoing him and teasing the fact that he'd be willing to come back to football for the right price. Especially if you noticed that the man that was coaching the Oakland Raiders prior to Gruden's arrival, Jack Del Rio, was actually doing a solid job. The Gruden signing from the very beginning always seemed like a reach for relevance. I suppose the guys making the decision maybe thought if you can't make headlines by winning games, you might as well make headlines for hiring a decade-old head coach for a contract worth a few Las Vegas suburban homes. We all know how the Gruden era ended up in Las Vegas, but what if I told you the failure of Gruden isn't even the biggest mistake the executives made? What if I told you that unlike the Washington Commanders, the Las Vegas Raiders literally missed paying bills, have multiple out-of-court settlements with past employees, and for years didn't even pay their cheerleaders minimum wage? But that's just the start of what the Mark Davis era would bring to the team. On May 6, 2022, Dan Ventrell, one of the men that were a part of the board assigned to take care of the Raiders, was fired. Ventrell took the job to become the team's president less than a year before his firing. And once fired, Ventrell said he was let go because he reported several of the complaints Raiders employees had to the league office and had accused owner Mark Davis of creating a hostile work environment. Immediately after this, the Raiders published a statement saying Dan Ventrell is no longer with the Raiders organization and we will have no further comment at this time. Now, to someone who doesn't know the history of the Raiders, this sounds alarming. However, Dan Ventrell didn't just stumble into the Raiders president's position. In fact, it couldn't be further from the truth. In 2003, Ventrell was actually hired by the late Al Davis to help run the Raiders. However, throughout the years of Al's tenure, Ventrell was promoted all the way to executive vice president and general counsel. In 2020, when Mark Davis finally began to become more hands-on with his team on a day-to-day basis, he hired a consulting firm to address organizational structure and overall paperwork. It's unclear what Davis found specifically with the firm, but shortly after, he fired many top executives by the names of Mark Bedane, who was the Raiders president, Ed Villanueva, the Raiders financial officer, Roxy Grant, who was the Raiders controller. Soon after the firing, Davis said publicly, "I think it's pretty much clear now," or "I don't know if it is clear now," but it was pretty much accounting irregularities, which included overpaying taxes. Davis also said that that's why the CFO left, the controller left, and the president left. That's what it was. Soon after, Ventrell was promoted to team president to replace the outgoing Mark Bedane. But soon, Davis would learn that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So Ventrell didn't just report problems he stumbled upon once he was given the president role, but he also reported problems that he caused. He reported the working environment he helped create and that he helped sweep under the rug for years. So with that being said, how do we know all of this? How do we know what those problems are? Who caused them? And how do we know that Mark Davis isn't just using his billions to rewrite how things went down just so he could look like a bumbling owner instead of another Dan Snyder? Well, on May 13th, a whole week after Ventrell was fired, the New York Times dropped a bombshell article titled "The Disarray and the Stone Age Dysfunction of the Las Vegas Raiders." In the article, the New York Times not only goes over the borderline crimes the Raiders have committed in the past 10 years, but also details the incredible lack of awareness Mark Davis had leading up to the franchise's move to Las Vegas. So now you might just be asking yourself, what exactly did the Raiders do under Mark Davis's nose? But just how exactly does a billionaire whose family business is literally football let his team get so out of control while still somehow turning a profit? Well, this is how. After the passing of Al Davis, Mark Davis officially had control of the team. However, for years, he would barely show his face in the Raiders' offices. How do we know this exactly? Well, his employees. In an interview with the New York Times, some of his employees said that Mark Davis was rarely seen around the office. There was little oversight of expenses, and money was often dispersed without a clear accounting of where it was going. Not only did his employees rarely ever see him, but if they did see him, they weren't allowed to talk about him outside of work. Why is that? Well, because Raiders employees were forced to sign agreements with the team prohibiting them from discussing their employment publicly. Essentially an NDA. Now, what is an NDA exactly? For those of you who don't know, an NDA is a non-disclosure agreement between an employer and an employee to agree not to talk about work or the workplace's practices. These types of contracts are usually used for companies who create a product with a secret formula or recipe so that their business is secure. But why is a a NFL team making every single one of their employees sign an NDA? Well, I'll tell you why. It's only because of how the Raiders treated their employees. In 2017, a lawsuit between the Raiders organization and its cheerleaders was made public. From the year 2010 to 2013, the Raiders cheerleaders alleged that the Oakland Raiders paid them less than minimum wage, if they even got paid at all. Eventually, the judge ruled the Raiders must pay $1.25 million to the cheerleaders to cover all of their minimum wage and to cover their out-of-pocket expenses. It's safe to say if the Raiders just paid them for their labor to begin with, then they probably wouldn't have paid $1.25 million in a lawsuit. But of course, they didn't learn. For years, the team would underpay its employees and at the same time create a toxic working environment for women, similar to that of Dan Snyder's with the Washington Commanders. If anyone complained, they were let go. According to Nicole Adams, who is a human resources employee for the Raiders for nearly 5 years, if any of the cheerleaders complained, they were let go. There were so many lawsuits from ex-employees that it became common knowledge in the Raiders facility. Nicole Adams continued in the article stating that Ventrell joked that he would be ready to settle if anyone came forward with a charge. So the Raiders organization has always acted scummy towards its past employees and didn't pay their cheerleaders once. Well, if you weren't disgusted yet with the Raiders' business practices, get ready for this downright illegal act. In the article that Nicole Adams wrote, she said that the team asked her to create job descriptions that would make it impossible for employees to file for overtime, even though workers could log 12 or more hours during game days, training camps, and other busy periods. When Adams told her boss that this was not only wrong, but literally illegal, her boss simply replied that he agreed, but said that Ventrell wanted it done anyways. So how come the Raiders are doing so much corner cutting and trying so hard to pinch pennies? Well, maybe it had something to do with the fact that they're run like Al Davis still works there. Veteran employees for the team said the franchise had yet to modernize much of its operations. And former HR worker Nicole Adams said that the Raiders kind of operate like they're back in the Stone Age. She added that everything was still very much paper, files, boxes, warehouses. Okay, so to answer the question we began with, why do the Raiders underpay their employees like they're about to go bankrupt? Well, it's because they still run like a 1960s mom and pop shop. In the modern day, not only can time be saved with doing business work online, but money as well. You wouldn't need to pay for the lights in the warehouse, the ink on the paperwork, or the rent for the warehouse itself, or any of the fees that come along with storing business records if the company just modernized like any normal business. But clearly that never happened. While moving to Las Vegas about a year before Davis finally went hands-on with his football team, the Las Vegas Raiders, at the time the Oakland Raiders rented a small office in Vegas in order to help facilitate the franchise's move. Well, not long after the move, the team missed a payment for the electric bill in its temporary office, forcing the lights to be shut off in its office. That's right, an NFL team, not an XFL, AAF, or even USFL team, an NFL team got its lights shut off because they missed a payment. This is a new low for NFL owners, one even Dan Snyder couldn't reach, and the Raiders reached it because Mark Davis refused to look after his own football team, one he was so fortunate to inherit. As recently as 2020, former Raiders employee Nicole Reeder sued the team not only on behalf of herself, but plenty of other game day employees for the Raiders. In the lawsuit, she accuses the Raiders of not only refusing to give them breaks when mandated by law, but also refusing law-mandated rest and not paying employees on time, if at all. The Raiders and Reeders settled out of court for $325,000, which doesn't sound bad, but when you consider that the sum was used to pay for the paralegals and the leftover was distributed to over 400 separate employees, it's clear that the Raiders actually got the better end of the stick. The Raiders weren't quite done screwing over former employees, however, as what I'm about to tell you isn't just despicable, but downright inhumane. Bradley Kaplan was a former scout for the Raiders and was a part of the team for the last 12 years. Kaplan was clearly a well-regarded member of the team as he was literally there since the death of Al Davis. In 2019, Kaplan and his wife were excited to finally welcome a baby into the world, and as a result, Kaplan told the team requesting he be able to spend time with his newborn child like any good father would do. The Raiders promptly granted the time off, and that's the end of the story. Just kidding, of course, because as soon as the Raiders heard that Kaplan just wanted some time off to enjoy quality time with his newborn child, the past 12 years of work meant literally nothing as they fired Kaplan soon after he expressed that he was having a child. Despite the lawsuit having plenty of evidence backing Kaplan, the Raiders were able to get the lawsuit claims into arbitration and as a result settled the case outside of court with Kaplan for an undisclosed sum. Kaplan in his lawsuit was also the one who told the world that the Raiders were forcing employees to sign quote-unquote unlawful confidentiality and non-disparagement agreements, which he said prevented employees from discussing matters related to their employment or raising concerns about working conditions. The Raiders obviously denied those claims, but in 2021, the Raiders agreed to a $25,000 settlement with over 60 employees who signed these NDAs, which means, well, I'll let you think about what exactly that means. My hint is that it was nothing good, that's for sure. Soon after the firing of John Gruden in October of 2021, odd things began to happen to Raiders workers. Anonymous employees in the interview with the New York Times said employees were given spontaneous bonuses, either $5,000 or a percentage of their salary, depending on their rank with the team. One former employee who received this bonus felt it was an effort by Davis to boost morale. As you can see, just after 2020 and into 2021, Mark Davis finally took control of his team back and saw just how devastated his employees were. And as a result, he thought throwing money at the problem would solve it. I promise you, it didn't. Jamie Stratton, the new HR officer and by all accounts of employees, one of the most beloved people in the office, was fired soon after the season for no reason whatsoever. All that was said in team emails was that she was quote unquote no longer with the team. Jeremy Aguero, the team's chief operations and analytics officer, resigned soon after as well. Soon after these two left, Mark Davis fired Dan Ventrell, and Ventrell's full quote after being fired was, "When Mark was confronted about these issues, he was dismissive and did not demonstrate the warranted level of concern." The Las Vegas Raiders have paid over $1 million in out-of-court settlements in the past 10 years, just to keep their previous employees quiet. What does this say about the Raiders? Well, it says that they were run by incompetent individuals and no regard whatsoever for the lives of the people that they employed. The Las Vegas Raiders, once a legendary franchise, started becoming run like a mom and pop shop all the way back in the 1960s. And as far as everyone is concerned, it's 2022 and almost nothing has changed. Don't get it twisted, Dan Ventrell was a part of the problem and not a cure. He by no means was going to fix any of the issues he helped create. And in fact, by all accounts of the employees you just listened to, he just made them worse. As for Mark Davis, well, Davis isn't blameless either. He's a billionaire with a wallet deeper than the Grand Canyon. There is no reason at all his employees should go underpaid and paid late. This is Davis's football team, and whether he likes it or not, he is responsible for hundreds, if not thousands of Raiders employees who rely on Davis to consistently cash checks. We've heard of other owners drying the well out and going broke while running a NFL team, and use that as an excuse to not pay their employees. But Mark Davis isn't going broke. In fact, since his move to Las Vegas, he's made more money in the past 3 years than he's made in his father's shadow entirely. With the firing of Ventrell, all we can do is hope that he was the final cancer holding back the Raiders, and maybe finally they can put the past in the past and just move on once and for all. Or Mark Davis is truly the issue, and his leadership is stifling the Raiders organization from inside out. For now, it's unclear which is which, and only time will tell if Mark Davis will succeed or not.